One of the most frequently repeated claims regarding the conviction of Lucy Letby is that the whole system at the Countess of Chester Hospital was blinking red with suspicion, and that staff on the unit in particular suspected that Lucy Letby was harming babies. Before we discuss this further, it's important to note that neonatal nurses work very much more closely with other nursing staff than any other medical specialist. This was confirmed by Karen Rees, who was a medical and nursing manager on the unit, when she was interviewed by the Sunday Times in February 2025. At this time, Rees rightly observed that the one person that knows her nursing team is the manager or the unit manager, not a consultant that visits a couple of times a week. It should be noted at this point that the consultants should have been visiting more than a couple of times per week, but the statement here of Rees is correct. We know they were doing ward rounds only twice per week, so that comment is entirely accurate. Karen Rees goes on to say that nursing teams know the strengths and weaknesses. I trusted Lucy's ward manager when she looked me in the eye and said, Lucy is fantastic and she's right by the book. She does everything right. It's important to remember that Lucy's nursing managers always defended her. Both Karen Rees and Ariane Powell stated explicitly that they had no suspicion of Lucy, rated her highly as a nurse, with Ariane Powell in particular really wanting her to return to the neonatal unit in the latter months of 2016 and the early months of 2017. It should be emphasised that nurses take their duty of candour extremely seriously, and hospitals have been described to me as relatively gossipy workplaces in which if there is any indication of a red flag, then it will certainly be talked about, probably at some length. It is therefore interesting to look back at a raft of comments that were made by Lucy Letby's colleagues on the neonatal unit. These were nurses who worked closely with Lucy, and they submitted their various statements to the Thirlwall Inquiry in 2024. For some reason, the Thirlwall Inquiry, which is the supposed inquiry into events at the Countess of Chester Hospital, delayed publishing all of these comments until the public inquiry had been completed. But we can look back now and see whether or not any of Lucy Letby's colleagues had specific suspicions regarding Lucy, or whether they'd witnessed her doing anything even remotely wrong. So the first statement comes from Joanne Williams, who says the following: I did not personally have any concerns. Letby attended a number of collapses and deaths. She also worked full-time and worked a number of extra shifts to cover staff shortness or sickness. The second nurse to comment is Caroline Oakley, who says the following: I thought that Lucy was hard-working and efficient, and I did not have any concerns or suspicion about her or her conduct. So the third nurse is one who doesn't appear enormously in documents related to the Lucy Letby case, but her name is Jean Piers, and she says the following: We always were told it was Lucy Letby on shift, and I thought to myself, she is bad luck in a superstitious way, but had no concerns. We then move on to someone who Lucy knew quite well, which is Minna Maria Lapalainen, as she confirms herself. I was a friend of Lucy Letby. I attended some social activities with her. I had no concerns or suspicions about her nursing conduct on the neonatal unit, nor was I aware of any other nursing or medical staff members' concerns. Then the fifth nurse we're going to hear from is Claire Bevan, who says the following: I was not aware of concerns of others until Letby was removed from the neonatal unit and relocated to another area of the hospital. So now we'll move on to the sixth nurse on the unit, which is Nicola Dennison, who says, I had no concerns or suspicions about Lucy Letby's conduct while she worked on the neonatal unit. So the seventh nurse to comment here was anonymised for some reason that is not entirely clear, but she was anonymised to Nurse Y, and she has some very interesting comments. I do not believe there has been physical evidence to prove criminality by Letby. I was not aware there were any concerns regarding Letby's practice until we were informed as a team about the external review. I do not feel the infants are at risk from criminal actions. I do not recall having any concerns about Letby during my time as her allocated mentor. I did not need to seek any guidance from the practice development practitioner or practice education facilitators during her neonatal placement, nor did I have any suspicions about her in my role as mentor. So it's clear that the anonymised nurse Y worked very closely with Lucy and, quite frankly, doesn't believe whatsoever that she's guilty. So we now move on to the 8th nurse on the neonatal unit, which is Elisa Simpson. I was not aware of any concerns or suspicions in relation to Lucy Letby whilst I was on the neonatal unit. So now there's the 9th nurse, Jennifer Jones-Key. I did not raise any concerns about Letby with those with management responsibilities at the County of Chester, as I did not have any concerns. Now the 10th nurse, Caroline Benyon, who says the following. I recall Lucy Letby being a professional and competent nurse. I had no concerns regarding her practice. And so now we move on to the 11th nurse, who is Laura Eagles. And she has the following to say. It did not give me cause for concern at this meeting that Lucy was present on duty, as she was a full-time member of staff with QIS, therefore it would not be unusual to be involved with the sickest babies. She also did a lot of extra shifts. I did not consider taking action in relation to Lucy being present at the desk, as I have stated that I did not have any concerns. As far as I was aware, no one else did. So quite a detailed statement there, and as she mentions at the end, she's aware that no one had any concerns, she didn't have any concerns, and she gives contextual reasons regarding why Lucy might be on duty more than other nurses on the unit. So the 12th nurse is Lisa Walker, who says, I had no concerns or suspicion of the conduct of Lucy. I was not aware of concerns and suspicions of others. Cheryl Cuthbertson-Taylor also comments that I did not have any concerns or suspicions about her care of the babies or as a nurse. Then there's Belinda Williamson, who's also known as Belinda Simcock. I never had any concerns or suspicions about the conduct of Lucy while I worked on the neonatal unit. I found she was very conscientious, and if she was concerned about an infant, she would come and discuss the matter with me if I was in charge of the shift. So not only indicating that she had no suspicions or concerns, but also that Lucy was essentially an exemplary nurse in terms of her attitude. So then Mary Griffith. I had no concerns or suspicions about the conduct of Lucy Letby while working on the neonatal unit. So then there is Samantha O'Brien, who's going to be the penultimate nurse that we look at in these list of statements. Whilst I was working on the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester, I was not aware of any concerns the medical staff had in relation to Lucy Letby. And then finally Janet Cox, who somewhat infamously states, I had no concerns or suspicions about Lucy's conduct. She was an exemplary nurse who is completely innocent of all the alleged crimes. So including Karen Rees and Ariane Powell, we've just heard from 19 nurses who worked closely with Lucy Letby. I guess that's kind of ironic, considering the name of the campaigning group. But there are 19 nurses there who have commented on Lucy Letby, and as you can see, none of them suspected anything. There was no one on the unit who worked with Lucy closely who had any concerns about her whatsoever. Now, if you couple this with the fact, as I'm going to discuss in a forthcoming video, that Lucy is known to have saved babies on the unit as well, then it's hard to believe that this was some hardened murderer. Nothing that we know about Lucy Letby and nothing that has been observed about Lucy Letby in that hospital is consistent with this. Indeed, even her chief accusers, Dr. Stephen Breary and Dr. Ravi Jairam, never saw Lucy Letby doing anything wrong by their own admission. Of course, we've had these jumped up claims by Dr. Ravi Jairam with regard to child K that now look particularly dubious. Increasingly, the reason that no one has seen Lucy Letby do anything wrong is becoming crystal clear. That's because Lucy Letby never did anything wrong at the Countess of Chester, and there was never any inflicted harm, let alone murders, on that neonatal unit. This is completely consistent with everything that we know about Lucy, who is considered psychologically normal even kind and caring. She had been a dedicated neonatal nurse for several years, and from an early age had identified nursing as the only career in which she was interested. There is nothing about the alleged crimes of Lucy Letby that makes sense. And this is just another instance of something that the public has been told, which stands up to absolutely no scrutiny when actually examined.